So you think you can beat me by outlawing my thoughts with your rogue politicians and the judges you bought? So you think you can mold me like I'm made out of clay? Oh, you want me to answer? Just got this to say. Take a look into this warrior's eyes. Tell me what you see. Take a look into this warrior's eyes. Oh, that still beats free.
Good evening, I'm Paul Fromm. I'm the Midnight Man on Stormfront Radio. Catch me every night at www.stormfront.org at midnight Eastern Time for my nightly program, For Our People, a program devoted to news and comments of interest to the European founding settler people of our countries, Canada and the United States. Tonight I want to be a little bit personal. I'm going to talk about what's happened to me. I was an educator in the province of Ontario for 24 years. I first of all started teaching Latin, but my main area, of course, was in English literature and writing and also journalism. And I had a very successful 24-year career in a community just west of Toronto called Mississauga, or Peel County. I taught a wide variety of students, and I received a consistent evaluation that was highly, highly positive. In fact, Robert Lee, a former director of education for the Peel Board, hailed me as an exemplary teacher. Well, what happened? Well, briefly, in 1997, after a 24-year career, I was fired. Now, I wasn't fired for running off with the staff coffee fund or doing something naughty with a grade 10 student or anything like that, or running a bookmaking operation out of the staff room. No, I was fired for the nonviolent and legal expression of my political opinions on my own time off school property. Now, you have to understand that. I didn't use the platform, unlike many of my leftist I didn't use the classroom, unlike many of my leftist colleagues, as a platform or pulpit to preach politics. I taught what I was supposed to teach. I taught writing skills, I taught English, I taught journalism. I didn't preach politics in the classroom, and nobody ever accused me of doing that. However, in 1991, I became a target of the Canadian Jewish Congress. Now, I don't think they just paid attention to me at that point. Having gotten a fellow teacher, a really great Christian gentleman down in New Brunswick, Malcolm Ross, having gotten him removed from the classroom in 1991, the Canadian Jewish Congress then decided to come after me. Why? You might find this hard to understand, but I have been an outspoken opponent of the waste of Canadian money in foreign aid. I've been an outspoken opponent of the Canadian immigration policies, which changed in 1965 and turned our back on our traditional sources of immigration, that's the British Isles and Europe, in favor of the Third World, and involved a population replacement of the European founding settler people of our country. Some of these people were very poorly screened. They brought crime. They brought major health problems to our country. I stood up and opposed that. And I believed, perhaps naively, that was not only my right, but it was my duty. If as a citizen you see a problem, it's your obligation to speak up. I'm appalled at the attitude of so many of my contemporaries. Oh, don't use my name. Oh, I couldn't say anything. I'm afraid. We have a culture of fear here. So that was number one issue. Number two issue was I didn't like the attack on people who spoke up. So I, in 1981, was one of the founding members of a group called the Canadian Association for Free Expression. So we stood up for people whose views were attacked, or who were attacked for expressing their opinions. In some cases, Customs Canada tried to keep their literature out of Canada. In other cases, special interest groups tried to shut down their meetings. In other cases, the government of Canada attempted to charge them under one or another law for simply expressing non-violently, and I emphasize that, non-violently, their political or religious or other views. Now, for those crimes, supposedly, the Canadian Jewish Congress targeted me. So in 1991, they finally decided to come after me. I had attended a public meeting of the Toronto Mayor's Committee on Community and Race Relations, and at that meeting, I had hoped to be able to provide a comment, because I had seen that committee try to prevent a meeting where I had been invited to speak of the Heritage Front, which was then a new group coming into its own, and it was a meeting, it was a public meeting on immigration, and the Toronto Mayor's Committee on Community and Race Relations had tried to shut that meeting down. They tried to pressure, unsuccessfully, the Latvian Hall to shut that meeting down. And I thought, it's wrong. Here's a taxpayer-funded organization trying to take away the rights of me as a Canadian to speak and other Canadians to come and hear the event. That's wrong. Well, I didn't get a chance because there was no way to get on the agenda. So one of the first speaker was a man by the name of Rodney Bobby Wash. He was an Indian anti-racist, and he was talking about a whole lot of measures he would like to see the Toronto Mayor's Committee adopt, and urge halls not to rent to racists and neo-Nazis, and blah, 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 blah. And finally, he said, and other measures. Now, I, at that point, did something that Canadians used to be able to do, and that was to heckle. Now, I didn't try to stop him from speaking. I just said, scalp him. In other words, like, how far would you go? Other measures, like, how far would you go to prevent people from speaking? Well, they flipped out. They wanted me to apologize, and I wouldn't apologize. I'm not going to apologize for confronting a bully. Well, they threw me out of the meeting. Well, that's okay. And it was kind of a nothing sort of report the next day in the press. The Toronto Star had a little bit, the CBC had a little report, and then the Canadian Jewish Congress got in on the act. And Bernie Farber, we actually taped him at a talk some months later where he said, and when I heard Paul Fromm say, scalp him, I nearly spilt my milk. I don't know what he meant. Real he-man having milk at 10:30 at night. He says, I nearly spilled my milk, and I said to my wife, now we have him. And the next day we got on to our friends in the media and told them who Paul Fromm was. And indeed, the next day the story was no longer heckler expelled from me. Now it was, teacher is a racist. And they came after me for my job. Well, a few months later, they engineered another media expose. And this was a videotape that had been sold to them by a sleazy undercover informant. And it was a videotape of a private meeting which I had spoken to about 16 months before. And I was one of many, many speakers at this meeting. And I spoke in defense of John Ross Taylor. Now, yeah, there were some people at the meeting who were more radical than I. And they seized upon that, and the Toronto Sun engineered a story, Teacher Addresses Neo-Nazi Rally. Once again, focusing on my job. Eventually, after 6 years of pressure, the Peel Board of Education fired me, not for abuse of students or discrimination. Nobody could ever allege that, but simply for the non-violent expression of my political views on my own time, off school property. No, that wasn't in North Korea or Cuba or the Soviet Union or China. That was right here in politically correct Canada. I'm Paul Fromm. I'm the Midnight Man. Every night, catch me, midnight Eastern Time on Stormfront Radio, www.stormfront.com.